Hi, I'm Paul Darley, President and CEO of WS Darley and Company, and I'm proud to be here today with Jim Salmi, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Crimson Fire, and arguably the foremost authority on aerials in the fire apparatus industry. He currently serves as the Chairman of the NFPA Task Force on aerials and has been in the fire service over 30 years. Very well known and well respected in our industry, and we're here today to talk about the Crimson Fire Transformer that was introduced earlier in 2010 and incorporates a Darley PTO-driven pump, our PSP. But we're going to talk a little bit about that and some of the other features of this truck. So welcome, Jim. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Paul. Glad to be here.
Yeah,
thanks
great
for hosting this.
So you bet. So tell me a little bit about the thoughts that went into the development of the transformer.
When we decided to look at the transformer, what we thought about was the mission. The mission is changing in the fire service from being a structural firefighting type of piece as a pumper to a whole host of responses that don't involve using the fire pump. We looked at NFPA statistics that show that 5 to 6% of the time the fire pump is actually engaged, which means 95% of the time it's doing other things. Responding to vehicle accidents, is serving as a first responder for EMS. But that means more cubic space available on the truck. So what we did is came up with a great structural firefighting package, but in addition we were able to maximize the cubic space available to do the other jobs.
You bet, and you're right on with those statistics. And in fact, the Firehouse magazine July issue actually showed the FDNY is less than 2% of their calls were actually fire related, which I thought was pretty interesting. So what you're saying is that by redesigning this truck, you were able to design a vehicle to allow firefighters to carry all that additional gear that they need to respond to all those new types of calls, and by far the vast majority of their calls. Now, did that lengthen the overall length of the vehicle, or what impact did that have there?
Now, when you look at the mission, what we did is try to establish a baseline where we didn't make the truck bigger, we just made it more efficient. So if we look at what we did in combination with working with your engineering people is to package the fire pump in a very effective way directly in front of the rear axle. And by doing so, we've got discharges and intakes that are just forward of the rear wheel well on both sides that allow us to be minimizing the cubic space that we consume for the pump while maintaining an excellent structural package, because we're going to need that when we really need it. And by saving that space, we can do a lot more. So what we've done is basically taken 130 cubic feet of space for a typical midship pump enclosure and reduced it to about 40 cubic feet of space consumed on the wheel.
That's awesome, and I thought how you located it in front of the rear axle was very interesting, because it usually is kind of wasted space on a vehicle, and you're able to do that by going with a PTO-driven pump. I know a lot of the fire service here is historically thinks of a fire pump has to be split shaft driven, because that was the only way to get the power, historically to drive a 1250 or 1500 GPM pump as is offered in the transformer. But yet new technology from Allison and Muncie and Chelsea has allowed us to get full engine horsepower through that PTO to allow us to power up to a 1500 GPM pump, in this case our model PSP. And I think, Jim, as you know, when you go to a PTO-driven pump, there's a lot of advantages. Number one, as Jim talked about, you get this compact design. But number two, it's actually much more economical, because instead of taking up all of this 120 cubic square feet, you're actually you're not using a pump that weighs 1,500 pounds. You're actually using a pump that, in our case, weighs 345 pounds and is very simple. It has a simple 2-gear transmission, a simple single volute pump. It's our PSP pump, which is our P-series pump with a single suction design that's PTO driven. And in fact, it allows you to still have the ability to add a air compressor or a high pressure pump onto the auxiliary transmission, and still keep a very compact, simple package. In addition, as you're aware, because it's a PTO pump, it gives you pump and roll capability. It's safer because when you're pumping, stationary pumping, you're pumping in neutral as opposed to drive. So it's just really 2 steps for a pump operator to be able to engage this pump, and particularly I think with some rural departments where training issues and recruitment issues are an issue, that simple operation is very important to them.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the safety situations that have occurred with runaway trucks, obviously the PTO pump is a huge element of safety, because now you don't have to engage and take the drive power to the pump. You basically have a PTO driving it. The other thing is there's tremendous weight savings in terms of the economy of scale. If you look at 16 to 1,800 pounds for a midship pump versus the weight that we're seeing out of this pump system, there's a big gain. The other thing is with the packaging forward of the rear axle, we are actually improving the angle of the breakover angle, so we can cross and forward things that can possibly happen and increase that breakover capability. The other really big advantage of this is maneuverability. We've been able to take the wheelbase in our shorter lengths down to 166 to 68 inches, which is very good for the city environments, makes the truck highly maneuverable, but you haven't given up anything. You've still got full capacity on your pump, you've got 1,000 gallons of water, you've got the capability for large compartmentation to bring all that extra equipment.
And Jim, from a serviceability standpoint, some of the things that you've done are very interesting. You know, the fact that our pump actually requires very little service. It has a maintenance-free silicon carbide mechanical seal. We utilize a 2-gear pump transmission that really just requires you to change the oil every 50 pumping hours or every year. And if there were a major catastrophic overhaul required in 25 years or so, all you're doing is dropping down a small section that has that pump and gear case attached, and very economically replacing an entire pump. So that in today's dollars, that's roughly $6,000 to replace an entire pump and transmission. So very economical, I think, from that standpoint. And what you guys have done to allow serviceability, that little bit of serviceability that's required on the pump is incredible. Plus, I think what you've done with your hydraulically driven valves was very innovative. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. But if you look at one of the trends in our fire service, and that is that we need to make maintenance simpler. There are going to be fewer and fewer qualified mechanics. I mean, just the state of the world. So we look at the serviceability of this as a very, very important factor. So literally, to remove this pump from the vehicle, it's 4 to 5 bolts, and the truck can drop the whole pump out. A basic mechanic can get at it quite simply. We've designed a manifold that is very easily serviced, all stainless steel, so it shouldn't need much service. And we have access panels designed into the body so that areas where we need to get at valves to replace seals or whatever are easily accessed.
Absolutely. Well done on that.
Also on the valve side, we have a very well-proven hydraulic control for the valve actuation, which allows the valves to be located in remote locations. So if you have a rear discharge, you can have a valve control. It's at the normal pump location, or it can be at the front of the truck. It could be literally in any location. Essentially what we have is a control that's used on boats, and it allows us to pump hydraulic oil to an actuator that allows the valve to open and close, eliminates any electrical concerns because we're not running wires anywhere. We don't have water and electricity mixing anywhere. And it's proven. It's been used on fire trucks for actually over 10 years in a couple applications, and in the boating industry for many, many years.
Nice. Well, it's interesting too, as you talk about proven, our pump on that vehicle has been around since 1994. It's our PSP pump, and it's typically purchased for customers who wanted pump and roll capability. So you obviously with the transformer still have that capability as well.
Yep. You have the pump and roll capability, we have the compressed air foam system capability through that accessory drive that you guys offer on that, and it packages up very, very nicely. So it gives us a wide range of flexibility. It lets us be very customer-centric in terms of what we're willing to offer and can offer, because we have lots of flexibility with our own manifold arrangements. So it's a winning combination, I think.
Yeah, well done. And I'll tell you, thank you for coming to Darley to be a part of your success with that program. Thank you very much, Jim.
Hopefully this will transform the industry.
Very good. All right, thank you now.